This is the Spirited Spectrum Part 2, Success Tips to Teach and Parent Children with Autism. And we have the honor of having a very special guest expert tonight. So last month we met Adriana Karka of the Geneva Centre for Autism, who led Part 1 of our Inspiring series. And now we have the pleasure of having her colleague, Andrew Davis, join us tonight to deliver Part 2. So a little bit about Andrew. He first became interested in autism when completing his Bachelor of Science degree at Queen's University. And after graduating in 2003, he immediately began working at the Geneva Centre for Autism as an IBI therapist. And by 2006, he was a supervisor, senior therapist in the program, where he continued to develop his skills in the areas of verbal behavior, errorless teaching, skill assessment, curriculum planning, and behavioral interventions for children with autism. Now, in 2008, he joined the Training Institute team at Geneva Centre and participated in the ministry-funded initiative to deliver training in applied behavior analysis and autism support strategies to childcare and school board educators across Ontario. Oh, that's a lot. So today he continues to work at the Geneva Centre doing consultations and training engagements as a Training Institute faculty. So Andrew, your extensive background in the field of autism definitely shows off your passion for really uncovering the truths and spreading awareness of this disorder, which is really incredible. And we so appreciate you being more than willing to share your knowledge with us this evening.
Absolutely, and I just want to say thank you, and thank you to Scholar's Choice for considering us and in giving us this honorable invitation to conduct this workshop on your behalf.
Absolutely. It is our pleasure. So at this point, I'll allow you to take it away.
Just so you can see my name and spelling here, Andrew Davis. I am a Training Institute faculty at the Geneva Centre for Autism, meaning that we develop and conduct a lot of curriculum and workshops such as this one. Now, I understand that many of you have already taken part 1, and if not, may have already watched the recording from last month's seminar. And what you would have covered at that point were the basic characteristics of autism spectrum disorder. And what I plan to do today is to quickly review and highlight some of the key challenges that we might observe in someone with a diagnosis of ASD, but then talk about what the main commonly used support strategies are for each of the different areas that you would have previously learned about. Okay, so what we hope to accomplish tonight is talk about what might be some useful support strategies that can be used either at home or at school, covering the following areas. So the areas of the communication challenges, social difficulties, sensory processing challenges, difficulties with anxiety, and cognitive processing. And I'll talk a little bit more about what that means as a refresher. Okay, so it's helpful to think of autism spectrum disorder as having a number of different components that pertain to it, such as this diagram here. So we can think of the individual with an ASD diagnosis in the center, and the various arms coming off of that are how that individual is affected and different components of what their ASD profile may look like. Okay, so let's refresh on the communication challenges that you might have observed or you may observe in the future with the individuals that you live with or support. Now, what we commonly see and parents often report, as well as educators, is that there's an inconsistent method of communication. And what we mean by this is that things are not always black and white in the way in which someone will communicate if they're on the spectrum. Sometimes we might hear bits of words, so a couple words here or there, perhaps even sentences, but then they don't come out and use those same words the next day. Or sometimes they use words, other times they point at things that they want, other times they grab your hand and take you over to the fridge to try and communicate that they want something inside. So they don't have a consistent, useful system in order to communicate with a large variety of people. They kind of piece little bits of it together as they go. Another challenge that we see in autism is this stereotypic or repetitive language. So some people recognize the echolalia, where they will repeat things that they heard directly back. So you ask, John, how are you doing today? And they repeat, John, how are you doing today? Exactly same intonation, however, they haven't processed the message that you were communicating and they were not able to respond. They just echo it back to you. Other times you might hear that they continue to repeat the same phrases over and over again, often things that they may have heard or read before. So something from a TV commercial or their favorite movie, and they just repeat this over and over, almost to themselves. But it looks like it's out of context and that it's very meaningless. Okay. What we also encounter are word retrieval difficulties. So that tip of the tongue phenomenon where they know in their head what they want to communicate and express. However, they have difficulties getting the word and actually saying the sentence that they want. And you can imagine the frustration that will then come with that difficulty in their communication. Quickly, I'll touch on the auditory processing to keep in mind. Simply means that the brains of people with autism are structured differently and wired differently, meaning that when we are talking to them and trying to communicate to them, their brain has a lot of difficulty making sense of those communications, and it takes their brain longer, and they don't always get to the same level of understanding as a typical brain. It means that they can suffer a lot of misinterpretations of instructions that we might be giving to them. And from our perspective, it looks like they're either ignoring us or choosing to be disrespectful and just not do what we ask them to do. Whereas really it's possibly that their brain has not processed that communication just yet. This also goes with reading comprehension. And then the last communication challenge I'll touch on is this literal thinking. And some of you may have seen this already where a lot of our individuals on the spectrum take things very much at face value of what you say. So, for example, I've done some consultations and I've been meeting with the parents while the child with ASD is playing in the other room. And he comes over asking for my attention and wants to show me a lot of different things and all his toys in his room. And I say, okay, I'm just going to talk to your mom for 5 more minutes and then I'll come and play with you. Well, guess what? 5 minutes on the dot, guess who comes running back? He literally takes that as 5 minutes. And that's just the way his brain works. So I learned to start to say things like 5 to 10 minutes. So it gave myself a bit of a window, but we have to be very careful about the messages that we send out to our individuals on the spectrum, because if they take them literally, our typical everyday language is littered full of figurative speech. Things like, I caught a cold, I've got to run, but then you walk out of the room, you don't run. And our guys are left sitting there a little bit confused as to, why did you say that if that's not what you're really doing? Okay, so that's a reminder of some of the challenges that we might see. Now let's talk about some of the tools that we can use to help support communication challenges. Now I'll preface this section by saying not every tool that I'm going to talk about is going to be appropriate for every single kid with autism. I'm sure there's a common saying that many of you would have heard is that if you've met one individual with autism, you've only met one individual with autism. Everything needs to be individualized and everything has to be tailor-made and specific to the child that you're supporting. It might be that two kids work well with the same support strategy, but we don't want to go into it with that assumption. That said, what I will present are the common support tools that we always want to try because they have a high rate of success. Okay, first and foremost, and if the only thing that you remember from me talking today is the use of pictures and visuals, you will be well on the road to success. I've mentioned already the difficulty with auditory processing on the spectrum, meaning that just listening to words and listening to information and making sense of it is difficult for the brain of someone on the spectrum. What they tend to do better at is processing visual information. So in any way that we can support our communication efforts by adding in a picture, making it visual, drawing it out, acting it out, color coding things, we'll talk about a lot of these, you're going to be going a long way to supporting the message that you're trying to communicate. Now, in terms of picture systems, sorry, I just needed to cough. I didn't want to cough in everyone's ears. Okay, so in terms of picture systems, there's a couple things to keep in mind. Um, the goal here is to have a set way in which the individual can communicate their wants and needs to another, as well as a way that will allow them to grow their vocabulary and allow multiple people to interpret this. Now, pictures are great for this because I can go pretty much anywhere in the world, show them a picture of a McDonald's, and they get a sense of what I want. Okay? We can use picture systems by having a sort of pointing system where they carry around a set of pictures of commonly desired questions or desired items or desired locations where they want to go or activities. And when they want something, they can point to this picture to communicate that this is the thing that they want. Okay, pictures, pointing picture systems are not bad, and the good thing is that at a very early age and at an early development level, we can still teach pointing. So that tends to work out pretty well. Um, there is another system that I'll tell you about that you may have heard of called the Picture Exchange Communication System, PECS, or PECS for short. And this uses the same idea in that basically all the vocabulary that you can think of your individual needing to use, we convert it into pictures. So there's a picture for all the people they know or that they interact with on a regular basis. There's a picture for all their favorite items and activities and toys and foods and drinks and places they like to go, like the park or to the swimming pool, different activities like going to the movie. All of these are eventually put onto a picture and usually placed into a binder similar to what you see here in the photograph on the screen. Okay, so when you um, have a binder full of these pictures, the idea is that we teach the individual to actually carry this around with them, and this becomes their voice. Okay, so instead of just pointing to the picture, the picture exchange communication system teaches the individual to actually take this picture out of their binder, seek out and hand it to their communicative partner. And the idea of having them actually make this exchange is that it also incorporates the social aspects of communication. So instead of just standing in a corner, not paying attention to anyone else, pointing at the page over and over and over again, the picture exchange system forces that learner, forces the child to, one, identify what it is that they want, two, seek out as an individual to communicate that to, and then three, actually have a social interaction by handing that picture to them. So it's a very effective system. I can tell you that the creators of the PEC system, Andy Bondi, is very scientific and behavioral based. So he understands the principles of applied behavior analysis, and this entire system is based off of that principle. So there's a whole manual that you can find that gives you the guidelines on how to teach this, and it's a very highly used system. Okay, so I will leave picture systems there. If you have further questions later, please just ask me. And I'll move on to the next one, which is kind of, you can consider an evolution of the picture system, which is now the voice output devices. Now, these technologies, or I should say this use of technology, is not exactly new. the idea of having a computerized machine of some sort where you push a button and it says the word that you're trying to say has been around for quite a while. What is new is the cost of the technology and the portability and flexibility of this technology. So, well, let me just see if this works here. Oops. Okay. Um, so one of the first voice output devices, if you look at the top left corner, and let's see if I can find all my fun stuff here. Okay, so you should be able to see this little arrow here. The Dynavox. The Dynavox was originally a big, huge, clunky device with very static pictures. They're just photographs on little squares where the learner would learn to push the button and it would say the thing that they want. Um, the newer Dynavoxes, like the ones you see here, look much more like an iPad. You'd be familiar with the iPad, but work basically the same way, where you can build a sentence. So you find the I want button, you then find the button that says go outside, and then you find a little button that says play. It puts it all together and it says I want go outside play. Okay. The unfortunate thing is that the Dynavox is still about $8,000 if you can find one. So cost is very prohibitive here. Used to be sort of the only thing on the market. However, they realized that this was not exactly an everyday tool for the everyday person. If I come down to the bottom picture, this is actually an iPad doing very much the same thing with an app called Prolo Quo to Go. And I could spell that out if you want to try and find it. It's let me just find the exact spelling. PROLOQUO, the number two, and then go, G-O. Prolo Quo to Go. And it works essentially the same way I described the Dynavox. Now, you can buy an iPad mini for $350. I see they're on sale now, 300 bucks. You can buy Prolo Quo for, I believe it's 120, $180 thereabouts. Put it all together, and for less than $1,000, you're mimicking an $8,000 voice output device. So this has really been an entry level voice output device for many families, and people are loving it. They're having a lot of great success. Just putting it in front of them, though, doesn't mean that they'll be able to pick it up and communicate. It still requires specific interventions to teach them how to use these devices. Now, I also want to talk about the little one that you see up here. And this is called a GoTalk Pocket. Now, there's a whole line of GoTalk devices. They're actually made by the same company that makes those expensive Dynavoxes, but they realized that they needed a low-cost, easier option. And a lot of speech-language pathologists still really like the GoTalks. Now, unlike the Dynavox and iPad, there is no digital LCD screen. So those are actual concrete pictures that you print out or cut out and slip into the machine. You can then record the words into the memory chip inside, but it essentially works the same way. The great thing about the GoTalks is that if you're not sure that this method of communication is going to be effective for the person that you're supporting, you might not want to invest the $1,000 or the $8,000 into the big technology machines. For from $120 to $200, you can get a GoTalk. This is a GoTalk Pocket, so you can see it's handheld with 6 buttons. They have GoTalk 9 and 20, so they're a little bit bigger with 9 or 20 buttons. But essentially, you can practice this, teach them how to use this voice output device, and then if it's really working for them, invest in something a little fancier like the Prolo Quo to Go on the iPad. And I should mention that there's also another popular app and service for the iPad called Talking Tiles. With Talking Tiles, the difference is that the app is free, but you need to subscribe for a monthly cost in order to continue to operate all the icons and download this additional pictures. So depending on which one works, you can kind of test them out and then go from there. All right.
Everybody's probably getting out their iPads right now as well.
That might be it. And searching for all these apps, everyone just took off on me. Okay. All right. Figured out how to get rid of that arrow. Now, I do want to spend just a moment talking about sign language. There's a huge desire and sort of an appeal to moving towards fancy technology and throwing an iPad in front of every kid and saying, look how wonderful this is. They know how to push the buttons and do all these great things. However, I believe that they're still new in their application, at least clinically, and there are perhaps certain limitations that come along with the technology if you're not using them in a clinical way and teaching the children how to use this as a communication device. If you end up finding that they'd rather just watch YouTube than communicate, well, then you have a problem on your hands. So the great thing about sign language is that it doesn't play videos. But in addition to that, is that unlike the voice output device and the picture exchange system, you can't forget it behind. And that's one of the sad things that we've seen. There are individuals who are great at using these picture systems, but someone decides that it's too cumbersome to bring on the playground, so they leave it in the classroom. Or are individuals so excited to get up and do something that they don't think to pick up their binder and take it with them, and then they're left without a communication system. Your hands, hopefully, are always coming with you. So with sign language, um, what we do is basically not teach the full syntax and the grammar of speaking in sentences, but again, simple signs for single words to communicate what it is that you want. I want up, or juice, or cookie, or car, or ball. And you can use this. They can learn to use sign. Same way, they have to seek someone out and initiate this interaction in order to get the desired items. So there's motivation there to communicate. The downside, however, with sign is that not everyone is versed in American Sign Language and necessarily understands what is being signed to them. So I said, I can go anywhere in the world, show someone a picture of McDonald's, and they kind of know what I want. If I go somewhere and I do the sign for swimming pool, not everyone might be able to figure out what I'm trying to ask them. So pictures are a little more universal. Your hands are a bit more portable. Ultimately, we want to find what communication system is the learner able to use, as well as what is going to allow them to be the most productive in their various environments. And from what I'm seeing, most people tend to go towards the pictures. But I certainly have taught individuals to use sign, as well as seen some individuals with a clear preference for it. So I'll leave the decision up to you, but I want you all to be aware that this is still an option, but we're kind of forgetting about it as technology comes in. The other thing that I should mention at this point is that a lot of people start to worry about, well, if I'm using pictures and if I'm using sign language, what about speech? Okay, well, here's the thing about speech. Some of our individuals on the spectrum will develop speech, and they'll develop speech early on, and they'll hit their milestones, and that's great. Some might be a little bit delayed and require some special intervention, but eventually get to the point where speech is their primary mode of communication, where they can go in lots of different places, talk to lots of different people, and get their needs met in lots of different ways. There are, however, individuals for whom speech will never be their primary functional form of communication. They might get 5 words, 10 words, even 20 words. They might even speak in short sentences, but to use it in a functional way where without reservation you know that they can go out, talk to strangers, and get their needs met. Some individuals do not get there. Does that mean that we give up? Absolutely not. But what it means is we still have to solve the communication problem. And communication is more than just speech. So while you're working on building up speech, while you're working on developing words and language, or sorry, words and sentences, you also need to address, either through pictures or through technology or through sign language, a way that they can communicate and express their thoughts and needs and wishes and desires. Um, we find that if the only thing you do is develop a functional communication system, the amount of challenging behaviors that you'll observe will drastically go down. Just think about the frustration. Try going through a whole day without being able to communicate anything. You can't say double double. You can't ask for no whip in your latte. Okay? You just have to basically take whatever people give you. It's very frustrating. So for our individuals who do not have the ability to vocally communicate, we still need to supplement with something else. Now, the research is good in that I can say specifically I've seen research for the picture exchange communication system as well as sign language, that these systems do not interfere with the further development of speech. A lot of families worry that if I teach them sign language, are they not going to learn how to talk? If they start communicating with pictures, does that mean they're not going to start to communicate with words? And what the research actually found was having an augmentative system can actually increase their chances of learning how to talk. So absolutely do not wait on communication and just hope for speech. Try and develop both at the same time. And hopefully what we see is that the speech emerges and that can become their functional form of communication. Okay? So, moving on, we talked about communication. I'm going to do a little reminder now about some of the social challenges that we can encounter in ASD, and then do the same thing. Just highlight a couple strategies that I've used, that I've seen people use, and that are highly recommended in the field. Now, the first and arguably the biggest component of social challenges in ASD is this idea of theory of mind. Now, I won't go through the whole thing again in detail. You can watch part one for that if you've missed it. But this essentially is our ability to put ourselves in someone else's shoes. And it's our ability to understand in our own heads that someone else can have different information and different thoughts in their head, different from my own. Okay, so I could be sitting in Star Wars Episode 1, Phantom Menace, and thinking, this is the best movie ever. And then I walk out of there thinking everyone must think that this is the best movie ever. And be very shocked and surprised when I hear that people do not like this movie. And I would just not get it. It's like, well, no, it was a good movie. It's a fact. I think it was a good movie, so therefore it's a fact, it's a good movie. Whereas theory of mind says, well, I can appreciate that someone else saw something different or didn't like certain aspects, and therefore they have a different opinion of those things. Okay? When you have a difficulty using theory of mind, it means that you end up in a lot of social misunderstandings. Um, Things like etiquette, things like simple social rules and courtesies. I sneeze in my hands, and then I see my boss walk in, and I offer to shake their hand. My boss might think, well, that's really gross and disgusting and rude. He sneezed in his hands and then tried to shake my hand. In my head, I might think, well, it's my boss, and to be polite, I should shake his hand, even though I sneezed. So we can have very different thoughts, and if I don't get a sense of what the other person's thinking, it can make it very challenging for me. Other things that we see as a difficulty in ASD is the shared attention. So you might recognize this where you bring in some new toy or gadget or book or magazine, and you're showing everyone, you're showing the class. However, our student with ASD is not even noticing all the commotion, not interested in looking at the same thing that everyone else is looking at that time. Doesn't mean they're not interested in that book. It just means that they don't automatically join in and share other people's attention and share events that are going on around them. Okay, so what this can look like is a preference of being alone. It can look like they want to be alone. It can also look like they are just over focused on whatever it is that they're doing, which is sometimes the case, but we have to recognize that it comes from this area of having difficulty sharing attention with others. Certainly, you would recognize this initiating and maintaining reciprocal interactions as being a big challenge. So, not starting conversations, or if someone starts a conversation, not really having a back and forth conversation. Often it's much more about, oh, here's what I think, this is what I like, this is what I know about this. And they're not really asking you for your thoughts or your input. Okay? Certainly, after 5 minutes of that type of conversation, and I'm being generous, 5 minutes, people kind of want to leave. People aren't really interested in being in a conversation where they're being talked at. Therefore, it's a huge social challenge for children, especially as they get a little bit older into that preteen age where it's all about talking and gossiping and cliques and groups. And I'm sure it's starting earlier than that now, but as soon as it moves away from hey, look at my toy truck, to, hey, let's talk about something interesting, we certainly see that this challenge becomes a huge limitation for our individuals on the spectrum. And then this waiting and taking turns, and that kind of falls into what I'll talk about in the next section, the cognitive processing, um, where the concept of time and how long do I have to wait is confusing as it is. But if you don't appreciate other people's mind states, if you don't appreciate that someone else might be thinking, hey, I want to play too, or Andrew's been hogging that toy, he's been playing with it for 5 minutes now. If I don't really appreciate other people's mindsets because of the theory of mind, I might have difficulty taking turns and waiting because why should I wait? Why should I give them a turn? I like this toy, therefore I should play with this toy. It's that very literal, direct logic that we sometimes see on the spectrum. And it's again, it can appear to be rude. It could appear to be selfish. What it really is a lack of appreciation that other people are thinking and feeling different things than they are. Okay, so how do we help some of this? Oops, not by that, by doing that. Okay, so what we can, what I'll show you here is I'll just point out some common strategies, and I appreciate you can't necessarily read the detail in here, but it's not necessary. I'll describe the concepts to you. Okay, so the first one I'll talk about is the one that we see Spidey here on our power card. And power cards are an interesting idea. They were first developed by a woman named Eliza Gagnon, and the idea is providing the learner, providing the child, the student with autism, a bit uh, of a story and a description of the right way to act socially, or a more successful approach to their social interactions. However, it's not good enough for me to just stand here and say, well, I'm your dad and I say this is a better way to do it. No, if Spider-Man says it, because I happen to know you absolutely love Spider-Man, if Spider-Man tells you how he likes to socially interact, you might be more interested in hearing a bit about that. So here we see that even a superhero like Spider-Man needs help sometimes. Not even a superhero can do everything alone. At first, Spider-Man was scared to ask for help. He didn't want people to think he was weak. He also didn't want people interrupting him when he didn't need their help. Then Spider-Man had a great idea. He would raise his hand and let people know when he needed help. This would keep them from interrupting, but it would also get him the help when he needed. Okay, so you see, I'm really doubting there is any episode of Spider-Man where he was sitting in class raising his hand asking for help. But what we actually do is we take the scenario that our student with autism is struggling with and we insert their hero. And now we see, what does Spidey do when he's in this situation? And we see that at no point do we ever say, here is what you have to do. All we are providing is some context and some information and a bit of perspective about what's another way to handle this situation. And we are going to continue to present this and practice it and read it with the individual probably on a daily basis. Remind them of Spidey when our guy's struggling with following this rule of asking for help. Say, hey, don't forget what does Spidey do? And this is why it's called a power card, because you can literally have this on a little card and either keep it at their desk, he can have it in his pocket, he can pull it out and sort of look at it and reflect on it. A lot of times we'll summarize just one or two or three written reminders if they're able to read about how to handle that situation. And that gives them the power to take control of their social situations and therefore be more successful and do something that we would rather them do as opposed to whatever it is they're currently doing, which is a bit too disruptive. Okay, so that's the idea of power cards. The other one which I love, and I love it because you don't have to be a good artist, which I'm not. I did not draw this one. This was one that we had found, but it's a good example. And the idea is simply just called cartooning. Um, and some people refer to it as comic strips or comic strip cartoons. And what this allows us to do is address the theory of mind issue. And first we kind of make sure they understand the idea of comics, where, in these comics, people say things, and we know what they're saying because we have these little speech bubbles. Okay? He says here, "How you doing, dog?" Now, the other thing that we get to see in cartoons are these thought bubbles. And thought bubbles are the things that people don't necessarily say, but it's what's going on in their brain. Well, how convenient is that? Our guys with autism have difficulty understanding what's going on in someone else's brain, and we have this great little medium here that can show it to them. So going on in this guy's brain, we see he says, "I'm going to say hi to Al." And what does he say? He says, "How you doing, dog?" Okay, now Al over here, this is a guy on the spectrum. What's Al thinking? Al's thinking, he thinks I look like a dog. And then if that's what Al thinks, what does Al say? Don't call me dog. Okay, so it's a way to help deconstruct and break down a social malfunction. So when you have an incident like this happen, you can kind of take a time to debrief when everyone's calm. With our learner with ASD, we can incorporate the other person as well, and say, okay, what did you say? Okay, and then what did you say? All right, and then what did you do? And then what did you do? Okay, now let's think about the thought bubbles. And we can start to try and figure out where did the breakdown occur? Where was the misunderstanding? Um, Underneath what they do then is write a little story around what they can do instead. Okay, so next time when Matt says, "How you doing, dog?" He's treating me like one of the guys. He's trying to be friendly. So you provide the understanding and the perspective at that point, so they have a little record, and it becomes a lesson around how should I interpret the social interactions of others when I hear these types of things. Okay, so there are lots of uh, great little cartoons that people have come up with. Like I said, you don't have to be a great artist. It doesn't have to be fancy. And if you're interested in learning a bit more about this, there's um, a clinician named Brenda Smith Miles who talks about this idea of hidden curriculum, which are those social misunderstandings due to unwritten rules. And there's also another woman named Carol Gray, and Carol Gray developed this idea of comic strip conversations, and there's a book on that you can also find more examples of doing this type of cartooning. Okay, so those are two great tools there. Just gonna get rid of this guy. Okay, a couple more things to look at here, considering social challenges. Remember what I said right off the bat. If there's one thing that you can take away from this night, it is pictures and visuals. Okay, all the things we saw so far, cartoons, power cards with the image of the superhero there. We're incorporating the use of visuals to help their processing. Okay, we can communicate lots of things through visuals, such as our social expectations. So, simple little strip here that we see with the field trip rules. Expectations: listen to the teacher, stay with the group, hands to the self. Okay, keep your hands to yourself. We always try and minimize the complexity of the directions. If you had 20 rules up there, the message is going to get lost for our learners with ASD. So I personally like to kind of stick to three main rules. I print it out. That could be actual size. Give them a copy, keep one on hand. I rehearse this long before we actually step out the door and go on that field trip so that they remember what the rules are. I get them to point to it and say it if they can. And then when we are actually on the field trip, this is really just a reminder of the rules they already know. It's not that you're trying to teach them in the moment. This little picture becomes a reminder of, oh, what's the rule? Are you listening to the teacher? What did the teacher say? Okay, great, let's do it. Oh, you're wandering away. Remember, what's the rule? Stay with the group? Okay, great. Okay, but this picture helps them understand the expectation. The other really simple thing that we can do, I mentioned that weighting was a challenge, is again presenting that weight visually. I said time is kind of abstract. So when we just say, okay, not right now, a little bit later. No, you're going to have to wait a while. Oh, it's not your turn. None of that communication says when is it actually going to be their time to do the thing they want to do. And for some of our guys, they haven't said this to me, but I truly believe, especially with the young ones, that when they hear weights, they process never, because it's sometime in the future. It's too abstract. A weight card becomes a visual that indicates, well, how long do I have to wait for? So we build this up. We don't just throw this in front of them and expect them to sit quietly for half an hour, but we start teaching them the concept of, oh, you want the remote control? You're going to have to wait. And we place the card in front of them, or we hand them the card, or we just hold up the card. We count to one, maybe two, and say, hey, you waited. That's great. Here's the thing that you want. Here's your remote control. Okay, and all you're doing at that point is introducing this concept of, oh, this bright, yeah, well, it doesn't have to be yellow, but ours is. And this weight card's available on our website through the visuals gallery as well at autism.net. But we show the little weight card, and then basically, as long as they're seeing that weight card, they know they're not getting the thing that they want. As soon as that card goes away, it means, hey, now I get the thing that I want. When they can wait for 1 second, we build it up to 3 seconds. When they can wait for 3 seconds, we stretch it to 5, stretch it to 10. We are really taking small steps until they can wait for 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 5 minutes, 8 minutes, 10 minutes. And then you're back into, what's the appropriate amount of wait time based on development level. So I still wouldn't make a kindergartner wait for half an hour for something they've asked for. Because it's just going to be a difficult thing, and eventually they're not going to tolerate that very well. But we can communicate to them the expectation by using this weight card. Oops. Let me get down here. Okay. Now, sensory challenges. You can take a look at this setting. Some of you might be familiar with this. Some of you are having horrible flashbacks to elementary school years. But there are a whole barrage of sensory experiences that are going on in your typical elementary lunchroom. Okay, there's the taste of whatever it is that your parents packed for lunch that day, the smell of all the different lunches around you. It's a very busy visual environment. People standing up and moving and twisting and turning, and people walking by, lots of different colors, lots of different items to see and look at. So it's very busy visually. There's the touch element of how hard is that chair that you're sitting on? What does the table feel like? Are people really close to you and bumping up to you and leaning against you and sort of nudging with their elbow as they're trying to use their forks? There's certainly the sound element of everyone talking at a loud volume, very difficult to process anything because there's 16 conversations going on around you. And then there's the vestibular component, which, if you remember, is basically our sense of balance and our sense of gravity. So, how upright am I? Am I stable? Am I likely to topple over? And depending on the type of chair you're sitting on, a lot of our guys don't have a good sense of balance, and it can be very difficult and actually taxing on the brain just to keep their body upright, which makes it difficult to process any information or do anything else because the brain is working so hard on figuring out where's my body and what's it doing, and I don't want to fall over. And then there's also this sense of proprioception, which is information that we get from our muscles and our joints. So it's normally deep tissue, vibration, pressure, compression if we're jumping up and down, that compression of the knees. That information is all processed through our proprioception system. Okay, so in any given situation, if our individual is having sensory challenges, all of these difficulties they have to filter through before they could even attend to the task at hand, which might be paying attention in a math lesson. Okay, so think about how distracting that would be if you're really working on just staying upright and not falling off of your chair. Okay, so some ideas and some solutions, and these actually a lot of these ideas come directly from individuals who are on the spectrum, who have found their voice collectively, and there are a lot more first-person perspective books that are out there, a lot more individuals on the spectrum who are speaking at conferences and telling us about their sensory experiences, as well as their own sensory preferences. Okay, so the first picture, we see these big earmuffs, and those are noise protection headphones. They're actually professional grade. These ones I found are called, I think they're the Peltor Kid series, and I think they're actually created by 3M. But they don't have to be these particular ones. I'm just pointing out that people are actually getting professional construction grade ear protection head muffs to help block out distressing sounds or sounds that they find too overwhelming for themselves. Um, I've actually had been doing a presentation similar, well, not similar to this, because I actually had people standing in front of me or sitting in front of me. But one of the women in the presentation self-disclosed that she had Asperger's, and she had her own head muffs with her. And every now and then, from time to time, she would put them on during the lecture, and then take them back off, and then put them back on. And what she described was not so much that the sounds were so painfully loud, it was more that they were all registering as equally important. So the photocopier at the end of the hall was just as prominent as my voice at the front of the room speaking to a class full of people. People walking by in the hallway outside got just as much attention and just as much brain processing as the fan from the projector that I was using to present, and the hum from the lights, and the refrigerator out in the kitchen area that was turning on and off. All of this was equally important in her brain, which made it very difficult then to actually just listen to me. So the headphones go on and just allow her to calm down and get rid of all that stressful distraction, and then she can tune back into me. Um, People also like to use perhaps music instead of just having blocking out the noise. Sometimes they like quiet music, or it could be rock music for all I care. Whatever works for that individual. The glasses are an interesting one as well. So um, there have been many reports by individuals on the spectrum who said that, especially fluorescent lights and certain computer screens, more the older technology, cathode ray tube computer screens, have this flicker, and it's really not noticeable to the average person, but for our individuals on the spectrum, they are seeing this flickering from all these light sources. And there has been some research, and a woman who's developed this intervention in this theory called island glasses. Sorry, Erlen lenses, she refers to them as, and there are certain tints that will help block out some of those distressing visual inputs. So if things are too much glare or if there's too much contrast that is difficult to process visually, some of these different colored sunglass lenses help to block some of that out. So I've seen people use that, or even in classroom settings, just wearing sunglasses um, while sitting in class really helps to block out some of that uh, undesirable or disruptive visual sensations that are coming in. For the sense of touch, um, we like to talk about fidget toys, and this koosh ball is an example of that, where some of our individuals are constantly seeking out interesting textures, and their body is craving to touch different materials and textures. They might be the ones who are often rubbing their hands against the chair or the floor or the table because they're getting a lot of enjoyable and perhaps calming sensory input through their tactile sense. Providing them with things that are interesting to feel, like this little tickly koosh ball, could be something that's very helpful to allow them that type of stimulation, but from a seated position wherever they are, so they can then focus on the work at hand as well. Um, the koosh ball is just one example, but people have built fidget kits using all sorts of different types of materials. Sometimes there are different scented cotton balls or scented markers in there as well, because the sense of smell, that might be something that um, helps calm them, or they find enjoyable as well. In the bottom left, you see this little stark cubby area, and no, that is not a penalty box, or you don't go there if you've been naughty. This is actually preferential for our individuals who are, again, distracted by busy visual environments. So by kind of hiding behind this little cubby here, you see it's plain white walls, not a lot of decorations up there. Actually, if you look closely, there's just a couple visual support strategies to help them along their tasks. But what this does is that it helps block out all the movement and the distractions in the classroom. Okay, and then the spice rack. What's up with the spice rack over here? Again, that sense of taste. And if you are noticing difficult challenges during meal times, especially food refusal, things like that, I just say investigate a variety of tastes and textures. Some individuals have very particular preferences for textures in their mouth, and we hear lots of reports of children who do not like anything mushy. So bananas, yogurt, oatmeal, cottage cheese, anything that texture sometimes is just going to put kids off, and they're not going to want to do it. Again, not because they're being difficult, but it's producing undesirable sensory stimulation for them. I had a guy who liked spicy everything. He was about 6 years old, and he came into the clinic with his own bottle of Tabasco sauce, and he just liked spicy everything. It was because his sensory system was not picking up enough input from his regular meals, that he needed more input to get some sensation out of his food. So he liked really spicy food. I had another little guy who would only eat food if it was microwaved at high heats, and it would be barely holdable. Right? It would burn your hand just to hold it, but that's how he would have to eat it. Otherwise, he wasn't going to eat it. So um, just investigate the sensory components of food if you're noticing difficulties there. And I would certainly recommend speaking with a speech language pathologist and or an occupational therapist who is trained in food and eating programs if you're having difficulties with that. And whoops. There's some special combination of buttons I need to hit to get to the next slide. There we go. Um, Other recommendations, definitely for the classroom, but some of these are true for home as well. Just look at where the individual is sitting. So in the big classroom photo, we see there are seats that are very close to the natural light of the window, and that could be good for someone who is bothered by the flickering of fluorescent lights. However, if someone has difficulty with the glare off of the page and bright lights in general, perhaps they need to be seated further away from the window. Okay, so you can definitely use preferential seating to accommodate sensory needs. Sometimes sitting by the classroom door is right next to the hallway, and that's loud because you can hear people walking in and out, and that might be very distracting. So again, you might have to sit further away from that door. Um, the ball chairs that you see these kids sitting on, again, is just making sure that they're getting the inputs that they need. Some guys on the spectrum like to squirm around a lot, like to kind of bounce up and down. So this can give them an opportunity to do that while seated. Um, and then you see the tennis balls on the chairs. And I know some of you already know this trick because I've seen this in schools before. But if you hate that screech of chairs and tables sliding across the floor in the classroom, you go to your local tennis club and ask for a donation of all their free used up tennis balls. We don't suggest you go buy Wimbledon style tournament balls and then cut holes in them. But this is a way to make it nice and soft and quiet in the classroom as chairs get shuffled around. And for our guys who talk about noise sensitivity, this is a huge saver. And a lot of teachers like this as well because you might not realize how grating that noise is until it's gone. So there's a little strategy there for you as well. Okay, a couple more things and then we'll be ready for questions. So when we talked about anxiety challenges, we just know that anxiety is highly present in ASD. And as more research is done, we're finding that a lot of individuals suffer from anxiety, either clinical anxiety or subclinical levels. But essentially, we see this need for high predictability, difficulty with handling change and transitions. There's that rigidity as part of autism, and anytime we challenge that, it leads to anxiety in these individuals. Okay, so some strategies we can look at, again, going back to our visuals to help communicate. In this case, what we're doing is we're trying to make situations predictable. So with our morning schedule, we can show this in advance. First thing in the morning, we say, here's what we're going to do. We're going to the park, and then we're going to wash our hands, and then we'll have a snack, and then it's time to read a book. Okay, and having this presented out, they can see where things are going. They kind of know what's coming next. And we don't just do it once, we bring it with us and we remind them, okay, we just finished the park, now what are we going to do? Time to wash our hands. Okay, let's go. But again, it makes it much more predictable and eases that anxiety and helps them transition to the next activity because they know what's coming up next. Similar to the social rules, we can present rules this way as well. Here example is a social time rule. So during circle time, I sit, I'm quiet, and I listen to the speakers. Again, we make the expectation of what is going to be going on known in advance. And this is a great relief for the anxiety and again helps with the transition. And then a deep breathing technique. So a lot of people find that deep breathing is an effective strategy to kind of slow yourself down and help relax yourself a little bit, or at least stop you from escalating to the point of losing all control. So again, how do you make something like breathing visual? Because a hard thing to do is actually just describe, okay, take a deep breath. So here with the square breathing, what we have people do is trace their finger along the square. So they breathe in for 4 seconds, hold it for 4 seconds, breathe out for 4 seconds, hold it 4 seconds. And it's again, it makes them connected to what it is they actually do of just taking a deep breath, holding it, letting it go slowly. So they don't just do a big inhale, exhale, and it's not effective that way. Okay, there we are. Other things that we can keep in mind is a lot of our guys have this sensory stimulation or sensory preferences that they enjoy. For example, sand running through someone's hands. I knew a guy who liked to play with a bin full of dry rice and just run his hands through the dry rice. If we know that there are certain sensory sensations that have a calming, relaxing effect, we can use this in a place to help de-escalate and bring down anxiety. You can build in 5 minutes or 10 minutes at the start of the day, in the middle of the day, and at the end of the day to just do this relaxing activity to help keep the edge off. At the bottom, we see our guy who's enjoying his train and stacking and lining things up. And sometimes there are these special areas of interest, as you probably know. Some people think about them as obsessions. I prefer the term special interests because obsession means something very clinical. But if there's a particular thing that they like or an activity they like to do or a subject that they like to focus on, allowing them separate time to go and do that isn't necessarily a bad idea if it's helping to keep anxiety down. The key here is to actually schedule it though and not um, have them do this all the time, all day long, where it then interferes with opportunities for learning. But if this is going to be something that can help them de escalate, calm down, and then re engage the learning situation, then it could be a useful strategy for you. And then at the top, you see this 5 point scale. And this is Carrie Dunburen, who came up with this incredible 5 point scale. And this is just a way to communicate and describe different levels of anxiety or arousal or escalation or anger. So you can put lots of different things on the scale, where 1 is something that describes a calm state. 5 is what the individual looks like when they are starting to lose control. And what this does is that it helps them understand what it is that they do at these different levels, and then we provide them with strategies that go along with each level. So when you're at a 3, what can you do? Ask for a break, go for a walk, take a deep breath. Okay, and then we start to teach them to recognize what level they're at, recognize their own support strategies, go and do that, and help themselves relax and calm. Okay, so the 5 point scale is a highly used strategy. It can be very effective, but make sure you're not just using it to say, hey, you're at a 5. The next thing has to be is, well, what do you do about it? That's the key. Okay. Um, there we go. Okay, and then with the cognitive processing, um, these are the challenges that we see. So planning, organizing, keeping things in order, remembering which order to do things in, making sure you're paying attention and maintaining your attention on that task, and knowing when to start and stop that task. You don't just get stuck doing one part of the task and never finishing it. Some support things that we can do here is to, again, use our visuals and ways we can do that. So color coding is a great visual processing strategy to help with organization. We can see that the math class, all the materials that are needed for that class are listed in a checklist, and it's all blue. So the blue, sorry, it's all green. The green pencil, the green textbook, your calculator. You can put everything in a green pencil case, and then they know that for math class, all I need to do is get the green pencil case and take it with me. And they don't have to keep track of every individual item. Okay. The time timer, the time timer is another classic one that people know about. And basically what this does is visually represent time. So when I say we have 45 minutes left, well, what does that mean? By looking at the time timer, you can see the little red indicator, and now I get a picture of how much time is left. And as the time ticks down, I can see that red begin to disappear. This is great for the whole class. I know people who have timers at home as well as at school. And the time timer company, um, you can just go to timetimer.com and see the whole variety of time timers they have. But they have ones for your iPad, one for your computer screen. They have a watch version. So very flexible in terms of how you use these. But people use them all the time for their typically developing kids, for their special needs classrooms, and definitely for students with ASD. We see the to-do taskbar over here, and this is again just a nice concrete way to indicate what are we working on right now and when is it done. Okay, so our guys transitioning from one activity to another, not knowing when to shift, this is a way for them to remember, okay, in this case it's a red box, and in the red box is, let's say, a puzzle task. They do the red box. When that's done, this could be on Velcro. You take it off the to-do list, you stick it on the done list, and that's how you know it's done. Now I get to choose. I can do the blue box or the green box next. Perhaps the green box is some sort of lacing activity. I can take that, put it on my to-do list, and that way it keeps me organized and knowing what am I working on and what's done and what's coming up next. Okay, I will go to the bins on the bottom right. You have probably already used some sort of system like this, but again, it's just visually organizing materials. Okay, so you can do color-coded bins. These bins have pictures of the items inside of them, so they can easily find where the gears go and where the blocks go and where the trucks go. Okay, it's just simplifying the information in the environment. And this allows for a lot more independence. If you say, hey, go get the gears or go get the blocks, they're going to be a lot more successful because of having the pictures and the visuals and the color system in place, as opposed to having to hunt it down. Okay, and then I want to talk about this little token board here. I snuck it in as a cognitive strategy. Most people think of token boards as a reinforcement tool, and I'm not talking about reinforcement too much in ABA as our principles, but the token board is basically that same system of earning check marks or earning stars in order to get your final reward. And with this example, what's actually also communicated is what am I working on? So in that little blank, you can insert a picture of a math worksheet. So they know, okay, I'm working on math. I receive one little smiley face for doing, and I can put it in. You got to do 5 questions. Okay, every 5 questions, I'm going to give you one little smiley face here in the orange squares. When you have all of your orange squares filled up, the reward you're going to get is, and again, I can have another little picture that I let them choose. Computer time, music time, alone time, play Jenga, whatever it is they choose, I stick that there, and this becomes a visual that communicates what am I working on, how much do I have to do, how much have I completed, and what do I get to do when I'm done. Tons of information in that one little visual strategy there. And all we have to do is make sure that they understand the concept of earning a check mark or earning the smiley face is worth something later. If they understand that concept, you are good to go. Okay, so some little tools there that helps clarify the expectations in a classroom or in a home setting just to keep information organized. Okay. So to wrap it up, and I'm definitely going to stick around for questions for sure. But just remember that everyone that you're working with on the spectrum is going to present their own little unique style. They have their own, what I call it, autism profile. So I outlined all the different categories, but which ones any one individual presents might be a little bit different. They have their own interests, their own strengths, and their own challenges. Okay, so just to wrap it up, because I know that was lots of information in a short amount of time, and I did not go into a lot of detail, believe it or not. We have a lot more information and training available for you at Geneva Centre. So if you go to www.autism.net/training, you can find links to our free online series. This was actually developed for educators with support by the Ministry of Education, and it's a 12 module course. Each module is half an hour, and it covers a huge topic area about autism and how to support it. And then for our more advanced learners or people who are ready to really look into specific programming and intervention, we offer an online ABA course that is ongoing registration. You can just decide whenever you want to start. And most people take about 2 months to complete it, but it's completely on your own time. And there's an opportunity for live interaction chats in that course as well. Okay. Um, Big ticket event, keeping in mind we're booking you now for 2014, is our Geneva Centre for Autism International Symposium. And unfortunately, I can't give you bonus points because I won't know who's able to identify that picture on the bottom. But if you're familiar with Temple Grandin, you would definitely recognize that she will be coming back to our Geneva Centre Symposium in 2014. Always a hit. So save that date and just tune into our website for some more details. Okay, so I'll end it there and I'll turn it back over to Reagan, but I just want to again say thank you all for tuning in. And if you missed anything, feel free to come back and watch the presentation again on the Scholar's Choice site. Thanks, everyone.
All right. Thank you so much, Andrew. That was a phenomenal presentation and so much to take in for everybody, I'm sure. Now, I know there are so many people on the call that are asking for a copy of this presentation and even wondering again where they can access part one. So I will remind everybody for this specific presentation, part two, it will be available on Tuesday, September 3rd, so a week's time. That will be via our blog page. That's community.scholarschoice.ca. And so that will be a video within a blog post that we will feature this presentation. Right now, you can access part one through that same site. That's community.scholarschoice.ca. And if you missed that one, you can get all up to date and be ready for next week's when it's posted. We will just take the next few minutes and open the boards to question Andrew about anything you have on your mind related to all of the information covered, or maybe something that was missed you are still wondering about. To get started here, I'll cover some that came in during the presentation. Um,
Sure.
Andrew, in the beginning, when you started introducing the voice output devices, we had somebody ask what age you would really start using those devices, like the Go Talk or the Dynabox.
Okay, great question. So, um, when we're looking at communication, we really don't necessarily decide based on age. We decide based on development level and where they are in terms of readiness skills. So, often what people first do is from as early as possible, so let's say age 2 or 3, they will start to introduce things like the picture exchange system and go from there, or introduce something like a sign language. Um, with the picture exchange system, because you're already using pictures, if you see that they become proficient with that, you can switch to a voice output device relatively quickly, and basically you're reteaching the exchange to the pushing the button. But no, there isn't any particular starting age. It's a matter of ability to do the physical motions necessary, like pushing the buttons and going through the menus, as well as being able to um, use that vocabulary and be ready to express those desires.
Perfect. Okay. To move along to the next one, somebody asked when using PECs, should you always start with the abstract pictures or should concrete pictures be used first?
Great question. So there's a program called Board Maker that many people know, and this allows you to get all those little cartoon abstract kind of line drawings that we see. But actually, what we find is that there's a hierarchy of understanding, and concrete items is the easiest thing to understand. So they want apple, and there's an apple there. Then you can go to miniature items. Then you can go to pictures of the concrete items, and then you can go to black and white pictures and get gradually more abstract. Um, so basically, we start at the most abstract level that we know they understand. And for some kids, you can start right off with those little line drawing pictures. But we have many individuals where we would take a photo of their lunchbox and use that as the picture.
Right. Okay. Um, Now, on that note, this kind of actually ties in with both of those questions. Are there visual tools that would be better suited for children maybe 2 to 3 years old? Or would that be something that you would stick with the sign language and everything like you mentioned?
I have not gone down to two. We started. I have worked with a 2 year old. Um, Essentially, what we would do is we would probably modify the format of the picture. Sign language would could be difficult because of the fine motor control if
Mm-hmm.
they have difficulty with that. However, instead of having a little tiny laminated picture card, we can get like a cereal box and have them exchange that. So something that is easy for them to grab, easy for them to find and recognize, you can use that as your picture exchange and gradually work down to smaller pictures. But in terms of um, understanding the system, no, we certainly can start. I know certainly by um, end of H2, by three, I've seen people using pictures for sure.
Oh, okay, great. Now, in regards to the sensory solutions that you covered, we actually had quite a few people asking if there was a specific name of those headphones that you mentioned.
Um, there was a specific name for those ones. Now, I don't know if these ones are any better than any ones out there, but I keep on coming across them.
Mm-hmm.
And let me just see if I wrote it down. But if you were to Google, um, it's the company is 3M, and it's their Peltor, Peltor kids line. And then you could put in ear muffs or ear protection, and that should show them to you. And then you'll see a couple different places that would sell them. I'm not sure what they retail for. Actually, I don't think they're too much. I think they're like $20 to $30.
Oh, awesome.
Um, but don't have to be those ones. Anywhere where you can find earmuffs that will actually designed to block out sounds will be helpful.
Okay.
And then I'll add to that, people like to use noise canceling headphones, but that's a pretty expensive option, but apparently they work quite well.
Okay. Um, Now we have a question coming in from a teacher, and this is a great one. Um, she asked, would a microphone system help with focusing an ASD student on the teacher, or like that would make the teacher's voice more prominent than other sounds in the room, or would that actually be more of a disturbance?
That's a great question. I haven't actually had anyone on the spectrum tell me about their experience with the microphone system, but here's what I would think. I don't think it's so much the volume that is a problem for them. I think it's the combination of all the different sounds going on around them. And I would suspect that a microphone system might introduce more sounds, more of a tinniness to the sound or static in the system. They might start actually getting distracted and hearing all the other additional sounds added. So it may not help. What I have seen people enjoy though is just getting a cheap, now they're cheap, digital recorder and recording the class or recording the lecture. And then this allows the student to go back and listen to it again. That way, anything that they may have missed the first time because of distractions, they can pause it, rewind it, and re-listen to it.
Okay, great idea. Um, Now, this is actually moving away from some of the solutions that were covered near the end, but a teacher also asked how, or if there's any suggestions that you might have about how you would approach possibly a parent or even a friend with a child that you suspect may have ASD.
Yeah, that's definitely a tricky question. Um, and I don't know if I have a great answer for you. I would say definitely not everyone is ready to hear that. Um, it could be that they have some suspicions, and having them pointed out could actually make the relationship a little bit worse, or they can take that the wrong way. What I have found to be the most sort of eye-opening for people is actually seeing um, typical development for themselves. So go on play dates. Um, you can go into different sessions, or do different activities where there's just lots of kids around of all different ages, and they might see it themselves that, okay, this is a little bit different, or I thought that was just his own style, but I'm starting to believe that something is different. Um, and if they can discover it themselves and raise it themselves, that's often preferable. Um, I've heard of situations where someone else has brought it to their attention and it just hasn't gone well. So I can't say it's the worst idea, and I know that people are only trying to help, but really until the family is willing to accept it and address it, um, pointing it out to them might not be very effective. They kind of have to see it.
Absolutely, it's a tough, sensitive situation. I assume that would
Hmm.
change from child to child and obviously parent to parent. Um,
Yeah, and the family you're in for sure.
Now, in regards, actually, just going back to our previous question, we had just had some great feedback from a teacher that mentioned she is a special needs teacher with a vast experience with ASD students. And she
Okay.
actually does use a microphone system and said it's very effective for eliminating distractions. So it's
Okay,
worked
good.
well
I'm
for
glad
her
that's working
very
for her.
quickly. So that's
Perfect.
oh, sorry, didn't want to cut you
Yeah,
off there.
no, that's fine. And that's good because, as I said, I haven't heard anyone tell me about their experience with that. So I appreciate you sharing that with me. So it's something, again, I can talk to others about and give it a try and see what they think about it. Thank you.
Awesome. So we still have a couple more questions coming in,
Sure.
and I will just get to a couple more and then allow everybody to finish off their night.
Okay.
Now, um, we actually have a question regarding a child that is deaf. So, would using the pictures, the visuals for a deaf student who is used to signing, would that help them understand a picture? Would it help them understand a picture better if you inserted a picture of the appropriate sign, if that makes sense?
It does make sense. And I can't give you an answer for sure because this isn't my training. I would definitely want to talk to a speech language pathologist about this.
Mm-hmm.
But what I'll say is that I've seen a lot of materials developed to support individuals on the spectrum and to teach communication, many of which have been developed by SLPs. And I've seen a lot of them where they do include pictures with the sign on the picture. So I would suspect that that would definitely help. It's almost like providing it provides like a tangible element to the abstract sign. To basically, it's kind of the same idea of us just having a word, but not knowing what it represents. So it adds a tangible, concrete representation. So I would say definitely I would try that. It's similar to, I didn't mention with the PECS system, but when people create PECS, we often include the word written in text on the picture. Not because I think they necessarily can read the word, but it could help facilitate language and reading down the road. So we often leave it there. Now, a handful of kids find that too distracting and they don't look at the picture, they look at the words and the letters.
Mm-hmm.
So then we remove it. But I would always say start with that and try it. I would be very, um, I would expect to see good benefits from keeping the sign on the picture.
Okay, great advice. Um, Now, we also have just a lot of questions coming in about specific names that we covered for the sensory solutions and even actual names of the people that created them. So, when we do the recap and when we offer the video for everybody in the audience to go back on, Andrew, if you don't mind, I'll grab those all specific names from you to offer to everybody on the
Yeah,
call as well. And
sure.
we can remind them again as well through that blog what the names were of the iPhone apps and the smaller names like that we covered. So everybody will have
Okay,
access to those.
perfect. That's great.
So on that note, I just wanted to thank you so much, Andrew, for being on the call, and to the Geneva Centre, all of your colleagues that have supported this event as well. Um, if anybody on the call is interested in learning more about this topic or the resources that the Geneva Centre has to offer, I'll remind you again that they can be contacted at traininginstitute@autism.net or by visiting their site, www.autism.net. Via those links, you will be able to gain access on the dates again that they mentioned about their symposium and all of the related resources.
Absolutely. And I'll just throw in as well that we do have additional fall courses coming up on the topics of anxiety, as well as ABA in a in-class session. So on our site, you will see additional courses that I didn't mention tonight as well.
Perfect. We have a bunch of audience members actually sending in through the question box their thank yous to you as well.
Oh, thank you so much. It's great.
So now to everybody, if you did find this webinar very valuable, feel free to visit community.scholarschoice.ca, where you can access part one of this series right now, and then part two on Tuesday, September 3rd. And you can also get a hold of more great educational articles. You can also join our Facebook community. We have over 7,000 members there at facebook.com/scholarschoice.ca. And when we are releasing great content, we usually inform people on Facebook first. So join us there and get a hold of all that information. Now, if you have feedback about this webinar, we'd love to hear it through our Facebook page or within the follow-up survey we will send you via email after tonight. And we really hope that you're all leaving this call feeling inspired and empowered to parent, grandparent, and teach children with autism. So, on behalf of Scholars Choice, thanks for joining us tonight. And we wish both parents and teachers a really smooth transition into the new school year coming up, as our next webinar will be at the end of September. So, we will be missing you through those starting days of school. Best of luck on the first day of classes. Thanks again to Andrew, and good night, everybody.
Thank you all and have a great night. Take care, everyone.